In this video, we're going to start our work on solving word problems. And to solve word problems, we want to have a good strategy. So let's go through these steps in helping us to solve word problems. The first step is read the problem carefully. Make sure all the words and ideas are understood. Sometimes students don't take the time to read the problem carefully and they miss important information that could help them get the equations and solve the problem much more easily. So make sure you read the problem carefully. Identify what you are looking for is step number 2. And I have a hint for you on that. Usually the last sentence in the word problem will ask you a question or will tell you to find something, and that will help you to determine what is it that we're looking for. And then use that information once you think to yourself, what is the problem asking me to look for? And go to step 3 and name what you are looking for. Choose a variable to represent that quantity. So you're going to see that as we go through our examples, we're going to take the time to add what I call the declaration statement, where we define what our variable is going to represent. Number 4, translate into an equation. So this is the more challenging part for most students, is how do I get all that information that I just read about and translate that into a mathematical equation? So we're going to look for keywords and figure out what was given to me, what information do I know, what relationship do I know with these quantities in the problem, and we will try to use that information to come up with our equation. After you come up with your equation, solve the equation using proper algebra techniques. Oh, that makes sense. But then this is important too. Let's check the answer in the problem to make sure it makes sense. Even if you don't necessarily want to substitute in the final answer into the original equation to check, take a moment to read what you just found and see if it makes sense in the context of the problem. And oftentimes number 7 helps you with that. Answer the question, the original question that was posed in number 2, where you identify what you were looking for. Answer that question with a complete sentence. Okay, let's take our problem solving strategy into our first example. This first example says the difference of 3 times a number and 6 is 9. Find the number. So what information do we know? Well, we have something about the difference, right? We have the difference, which kind of tells us that there's going to be some sort of subtraction, doesn't it? And then 3 times a number. Okay, so we're going to have to do some sort of multiplication there, the word times, 3 times a number. So the difference of 3 times a number and 6 is 9. So that is word. Maybe that might mean an equal sign, right? And then finally it says find the number. So identify what we're looking for. So what are we looking for? We're looking for a number, aren't we? And so we need to declare our variable. We need to choose a variable that's going to represent what we're looking for, which is there's this mysterious number, right? And so let's use a variable. How about n? So this is what I call the declaration statement, where you're going to write let n equal the number. Okay, and students like to kind of skip that step, but you're going to find that as the word problems get more detailed and more complicated, being able to carefully define what you're using your variable to represent is going to help you to not only determine the equation, but also to see if the answer that you get makes sense in the context of the problem. So it's good to get into the habit of including the declaration statement in your word problems. Okay. So now we have to use the given information, we've got it highlighted here in blue, in order to write an equation. So we have the difference of, which we decided was a subtraction, 3 times a number. So our number, we're now letting that be n, okay? And so 3 times a number will be 3 times n. So we're going to write 3n and difference, so we have that subtraction. So the difference of 3 times a number and 6, so 3n minus 6 is, so that's an equals, is means equals 9. So here's our equation. 3 times a number, 3n minus 6 equals 9. Now let's solve that. So our first step, of course, will be that we want to add 6 to both sides so that we're trying to isolate n, right? By the way, right, this is a linear equation, and for linear equations the strategy is to isolate the variable. And a reminder, what's a linear equation? That is an equation where your variable is to the power of 1. So we have n to the first power. Okay, So we're going to add 6 to both sides, and we get 3n equals 15. Then we're going to still trying to isolate that n, so we're going to divide by 3 both sides. N equals 5. So let's check that. 3 times 5, 15. 3 times a number, right? So 3 times 5, 15, minus difference, 15 minus 6. Does that equal 9? It sure does. So that checks. So answer the question with a complete sentence. The number is 5. And again, remember that with this first problem, we're trying to establish some good habits to help solve word problems. These are habits that you're going to take on as the word problems get more intricate and more detailed. Let's go to the next problem. So now it says the product, so that means multiplication, of 2 more than a number. So the product of 2 more than a number and 7 is 13. Find the number. Okay, so again, declaration statement. We're trying to find that number again, right? So again, let n equal the number. That's our declaration statement. Tells us what a variable is representing. And now we've got here a product. So we know there's going to be some sort of multiplication. It says 2 more than a number. So the number's n. So 2 more than that. What algebraic expression can we write? Well, n plus 2. So 2 more than a number is n plus 2, and we're supposed to multiply that because it says product times 7, right? So let's put that 7 in front. The product of 2 more than a number and 7, that's what we have here on the left, is, so there's our equal sign, 13. Find the number. So there's our equation. And now what are we going to do first to find this number? Well, if you said distributive property, you're right. So we're going to distribute that 7. And so we get 7n plus 14, and that equals 13. And linear equation again, we have n to the first power. We have to isolate n. So let us subtract the 14 first to isolate the n. Okay, there it is. And now here we get 7n equals negative 1. And then we need to divide by 7 so that we can isolate the n. So n equals negative 1/7. Oh boy, I didn't expect that, did you? So let's check that, right? So we're going to check that. And I'm going to teach you how to check this using your calculator. So there is a stow key, a storage key in the calculator. So if you don't want to work with this fraction right now, I want to show you how to do that using the calculator. Okay, so let me show you how you can use your calculator to check that. Now, obviously, you can just type right in the negative 1/7 and do that math. But I'm going to show you if you have a TI 83 or 84, you have a stow key. And the stow key is located down here near the 1, okay? And what you're going to do is you're going to type in negative 1/7, okay, which is our solution, right? And you're going to store it, so you hit the stow key, see that puts that little arrow there, into x. X is a variable, so you need the variable, right? And the x key is up here by the alpha key, okay? And then you're going to hit enter. Gives you a decimal, don't worry about that. So now what you're going to do is you're going to type in the equation just the way that we wrote it on the paper, except that we're using x instead of n, right? So x plus 2. Notice I'm putting in all the parentheses and everything, okay? So, and actually, you're going to type in the left side of the equation. Don't type in the whole equation, just the left. And when I hit enter, what we're checking for is to see if we get the 13. And that will tell us that our solution is right. So I'm going to hit enter now. See how we got the 13? So that tells you that your negative 1/7 solution is the correct number. Okay? The answer to the question is the number is negative 1/7. Okay, let's go to the next problem now. So our next number says 20 more than the difference, 20 more than the difference between a number and 9 is 19. Okay, there's a lot of words there, right? Find the number. So you know we're going to start with our declaration statement. Let n equal the number. Okay, we're going to work this equation kind of inside out. You see how it says 20 more than the difference between a number and 9? that difference, we need to build that first. And that's going to be in a parentheses. Just put it in a parentheses just to kind of keep that thought together. You want the difference between a number and 9. And just a hint for you that when you see the word the difference, you put the number and the 9 in the order that is read. So the n comes first. So n minus 9. So the difference between a number and 9 is this expression, n minus 9. And we want 20 more than that. So see that word more than? That means that it's going to come behind the difference. So expressions like less than or more than, you will put that number behind the symbol, the operation. So if it's more than, then you go plus and then put your number. If it's less than, then you go minus and then put your number behind it. See? So I'm going to put the 20 right here. So 20 more than the difference between a number and 9 is, remember that it means equals 19. All right, so luckily in this particular case, the parentheses was not really needed, right? Had we been multiplying, had it been a product, then we would need the parentheses. But since it's a more than, then we can go ahead and add these two like terms here on the right-hand side first together before we start isolating n, okay? So negative 9 plus 20 is an 11. So n plus 11 equals 19. I bet you can tell what number do you add to 11 to get 19? N must be 8, right? The difference between 8 and 9, 8 minus 9 is negative 1. And if you add a 20 to that, you do get your 19 back. So that checks. So the number is 8. The number we were asked to find is 8. Okay, one more in this video. Let's see how you do here. So the quotient, quotient, that means there's a division. So the quotient of 2 less than a number, see, remember we talked about less than? So 2 less than a number, I'm going to put a little parenthesis around. This is an expression right here. So the quotient, divide 2 less than a number and 5. So the quotient 2 less than a number and 5 is 8. Find the number. Let n be the number. Okay, our declaration statement. We're training ourselves, right? And now we need a division, right? I want to put a fraction bar like that for divide. Because then I have 2 less than a number. This is our n, right? 2 less than that number. So remember how we talked about less than and more than? You put the number, the 2 goes after the subtraction sign. So n minus 2. And then the quotient of, so you're dividing that expression with the number 5. And that equals an 8. So there's our equation, which is a little bit more complicated than our last few equations, isn't it? So the first thing we need to do here to solve that 5. Let's clear that fraction. Let's get rid of that 5. And how we're going to do that is we're going to go ahead and multiply both sides of our equation by 5 over 1, right? Which is the reciprocal, because this 5 down here in the quotient, that's like a 1/5. That's understood to be like a 1/5 when you have the 5 in the denominator like that. So we're multiplying both sides by 5. And notice how that will reduce these two 5s to 1s here. And then over here you get the 40. And so now you have n minus 2 equals 40. And so, of course, we're going to add 2 to both sides. And so n equals 42. So we're going to check that. So 42 minus 2 divided by 5, does that equal 8? Well, 42 minus 2 is 40. 40 divided by 5 is 8. So that definitely checks. So what's the number? The number is 42. I hope that helps. And we're going to go to the next video. We have several more videos on word problems. We're going to use the same strategy. So take what you learned here in this video, and now let's go to the next video for more complicated equations.